Hello, everyone. This is Bhargav here, joining you after a hiatus of a couple of weeks with changing weathers in India. I was a little down, so my friend Uday used to cover off on my areas. Now, Paul will not be joining us today as he is busy with some of the client work. Uday, I'll hand it over to you to cover East Asia Pacific.
Thanks, Bhargav. So first off, we covered one assessed event and 33 other developments today. I'll jump into Southeast Asia. The Papuan Police General Chief Inspector said that 44 people have been killed in separatist-related violence in the Papuan provinces this year, and this is an 88% increase from the last year. Now, we've released a lot of assessments on this, so you can contact us for a risk profile of the situation in Papua. Now, also in Indonesia, the state-owned oil and gas company Pertamina said that it was taking steps to ensure that fuel supply across the country does not get disrupted by a planned worker strike. The strike is from December 29th to January 7th. In where 46 houses were damaged by a tornado in Makassar yesterday. Authorities have warned of flooding in South Jakarta today, and Mount Merapi in Java erupted and released hot clouds 3 times yesterday. Also, just to cover off something we are looking at in Indonesia, authorities have warned of increased security threats for the Christmas and New Year period, and one of the threats is terrorism. So that's something to look out for clients. Now, if we go to Malaysia, authorities have said that the Sungai Pahang, which is the Pahang River, has reached danger levels at several places in the state. Now, this comes after devastating floods last weekend, which affected hundreds of thousands of people. And the Met Department said that rains could occur in parts of Johor, Sabah, and Sarawak from December 28th to December 30. Now, in the Philippines, authorities claimed that they foiled a suspected Abu Sayyaf bomb plot in Zamboanga in the Sulu archipelago. And also, 2 politicians were injured in an attack in Misamis Oriental. Now, these kind of attacks will increase in frequency ahead of next year's presidential elections. Quickly jumping over to Thailand, bad news out of Bangkok. City Hall has canceled all New Year-related events that it had organized, and it's urging private organizers of private events to do the same, because everyone's concerned about the spread of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. So I'll quickly go over North Asia. There's a workers' strike in South Korea on December 28th. Approximately 1,700 workers of one of South Korea's largest logistics firms. It owns 50% of the market share, are going on strike next week for better working conditions. And we have caught a trend of this happening over the last year in the country. I'll quickly run through Australasia and the Pacific Islands now. In Papua New Guinea, a man was shot. No, sorry. In Papua New Guinea, an Australian national was robbed, and he was held hostage for a while in Madang yesterday. The suspects shot at the minibus he was traveling to, and they took him and robbed him of his belongings. For anyone seeking to travel in Papua New Guinea, it is recommended to conduct a risk assessment beforehand. And lastly, in the Solomon Islands, China said that it will send police officers to the Solomon Islands to help train police forces there. Now, this comes after the unrest in Honiara last month, and we did release a special assessment on the topic, so you can contact us if you want to know more. But I think, Bhargav, that pretty much rounds it off for East Asia and Pacific from me for today.
Thank you. There, I must add here that we have this year itself, we have conducted multiple detailed risk assessments for our oil sector and engineering sector clients in Myanmar, Thailand, Eastern Malaysia, as well as Papua. So those who are interested can certainly get in touch with us. We'll be able to help you out as much as possible. And with that, I would like to move on to South Asia. Tension seems to be heating up in northern India with some so-called religious scholars and saints saying quite a few rubbish things about religious cohesion in the country. And there was a blast in Ludhiana and Punjab as well. Uday, would you like to elaborate on these?
Yeah, well, firstly, I don't think it was too much about religious cohesion as much as it was to divide people. But anyway, regarding the blast in Ludhiana, Punjab, so at least two people died and five others were injured at a court complex in Punjab yesterday. Now, some reports are saying that it was a Pakistan-backed Sikh separatist group, but as of now, that's more propaganda or just hearsay. Punjab does have a history of violence around election periods. A very important state election is coming next year. I mean, most states in India have an uptick in violence before polls. Wouldn't you agree, Bhargav?
Most certainly. And as and when the elections do come up, those who want to create a social fissure for political benefits and create dissonance against the incumbents, they do benefit from such acts. And yes, it is very convenient to blame the actors across the border for such incidents. However, there are quite a few social fissures within the country which may have actually caused such acts. However, we can't really marginalize or take it out of the equation when it comes to external help for such dissidents. After all, RDX don't really occur in nature, or they don't really come up in vacuum. They need to come from somewhere where they have technical capability to produce and supply. Uday, anything further on South
Yeah.
Asia?
Yeah, so I agree with what you said. It's a convoluted situation, and there's a lot of motives behind this kind of thing. But Pakistan security forces have also been put on high alert across the country for the Christmas holidays. One of the concerns is terrorism. And speaking of that, Bhargav, I'd love to hear your comments. So the Afghan Taliban has been removing some of Pakistan's fence along the Duran line. Now the Afghan Taliban is saying that it does not recognize the Duran line. And recently, some Taliban officials have criticized Pakistan for being a democracy and not imposing Sharia law across the country. Any thoughts of?
Well, we need to understand the convoluted relationship between a proxy actor, or let's say alleged proxy actor that Afghan Taliban was for the Pakistani security establishment. The entire equation itself is quite convoluted, as we have seen time and again, that a benefactor and the proxy's relationship is anything but linear. As and when the proxies do get fatter and more powerful, they end up fighting for their own interests rather than dance to the tunes of that of benefactors. However, for businesses and people on the ground, the upcoming days is likely to be quite grim because they will need to understand who's actually in power, and most often than not, it's the Pakistani military who takes precedence. So businesses need to watch out, especially along the Afghan border, to secure their interests, their operations, and deploy appropriate measures. We can certainly help with that. Uday, maybe we can move on to Middle East unless you have anything further.
No, that's it, I think. Bassel, why don't you tell us what's going on in the Middle East now?
Sure, Uday. Thank you. Thank you, Bhargav. In the EMEA roundup today, we have more than 44 developments. In the Middle East in particular, we assessed an event in Iran. Violent protests continue in Iran. Thousands of teachers are protesting across 120 towns and cities, especially in Tehran and Shiraz, against or over low wages and poor working conditions. The protests have been going on for around 2 months. And also clashes between security forces and protesters broke out in Shiraz. Another development from Iran, at least two people were killed during an explosion at a flowers market in Tehran yesterday. If we go over to Iraq, the targeting of the US-led coalition convoys continue, and a roadside bomb exploded yesterday, targeting a US-led coalition supplies convoy in Saladin Governorate. Also in the United Arab Emirates, the suspension of flights also continue. The United Arab Emirates suspended passengers from entering the UAE from 4 different African countries. In addition, in Yemen, the war continues, and the Saudi-led coalition are continuing their airstrikes on the capital Sana'a. At least 9 Houthi weapons warehouses were destroyed by the coalition at Al Tashrifat camp yesterday. That's it from the Middle East. Bhargav.
Thank you,
Over to you.
Bassel. Now I would like to introduce 2 new members to our analytical team in the EMEA region. Sitati is joining us from Kenya, and Chudi will be joining us from Lagos. Over to you, Sitati, to cover Eastern and Northern Africa.
Thank you, Bhargav, for that warm introduction. We start off in Libya, whereby the Petroleum Facilities Guard urged its members on December 22nd to conditionally call off the siege on several oil and gas fields in the country. Across in Tunisia, the General Labor Union yesterday announced the commencement of a 2-day strike by postal agents on January 19th and 20th of next year. Across in the Eastern and Central region of Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, at least 26 miners were killed by suspected Cooperative for Development of the Congo militiamen in Lojo gold mining area in Djugu territory in Ituri province. The incident happened on December 22nd. That's all from me from those regions. Thank you, Bhargav.
Over to you, Chudi. Please cover West Africa and Southern Africa.
Morning. Thank you for the introduction. In Southern Africa, I'll start with Angola. Angola Telecom yesterday suspended a workers' strike that was planned for December 27th. The strike was called off after the government made some concessions, including streamlining of career progression and payment of salaries. All the demands will be addressed, are scheduled to be addressed in February and May of 2022 next year. Going over to West Africa, in Nigeria, 3 people drowned to death while 17 others were rescued by Marine police following the capsizing of a commercial boat in Badagry waterways. 1 traditional ruler was kidnapped by gunmen in Ekiti State. The incident occurred near the capital city, and the manhunt is currently on the way for the suspects. At least 5 people were killed yesterday following a string of bomb explosions in Maiduguri, Borno State. The bombings occurred close to the Nigerian Air Force Base and the local airport, which was scheduled to be visited by the President Muhammadu Buhari. According to local reports, Boko Haram militants have been accused of triggering the bombs. Finally, at least 4 people were abducted on December 22nd following an attack on a mosque by a gunman in Gassol local government area, Taraba State. The incident occurred in Tella town during the evening. In Niger, at least 7 people were killed in attacks that took place from December 22nd to December 23rd in Malakondi. According to local sources, a police checkpoint and a customs weighing point were attacked. The victims included 3 civilians, 2 security forces, and 2 custom officers. The identity of the attackers have yet to be released. Finally, in Mali, at least 500 Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group arrived yesterday in Bamako. According to local sources, the mercenaries will be deployed in 10 localities in the country. The arrival of the Wagner Group operatives amid the ongoing withdrawal of the French army from the country has raised concerns from European countries of growing instability if the presence of the mercenaries remain unchecked. The Malian authorities have countered the threat by issuing a statement claiming that the deployment is only in the country to safeguard peace and reconciliation. This completes the roundup for West and Southern Africa.
Thank you, Chudi. In Europe, several countries have increased the restrictions due to COVID-19 outbreak, primarily because of the new variant, that is Omicron. In Germany specifically, at least 11 protesters were arrested by security forces during protests at several locations in Munich yesterday. Similarly, other countries, including Greece, Italy, Spain, Netherlands, and Sweden, have increased their restrictions. In Eastern Europe, things do not seem to calm down anytime soon. In Ukraine, there seems to be deployment of paramilitary or mercenary group from Russia, more specifically Wagner Group. However, this is very hard to determine whether it's actually Wagner Group because they are shadowy actors. In the UK, it seems to be any other week because there is a strike announcement by the National Rail Union. Workers working on the Victoria and Central lines will go on strike for nearly 6 months until June 2022. That's a wrap from Europe. Uday, do you have any final comments or inputs?
It's been an eventful year. Now it's time for the holidays. So happy holidays to everyone, and we'll be here to support your business operations next year.
Thank you, Uday. With that, we'll call it a day. Thank you, everyone.